The alleyway was the kind of place most people avoided once the sun went down, narrow, wet, echoing with the distant hum of city sirens and the soft scurry of rats moving through discarded takeout boxes. But on this particular night, something else stirred in that darkness. A homeless woman named Marla huddled against a rusted dumpster, her torn blanket wrapped around her thin shoulders as she tried to shield a trembling brown and white puppy pressed against her chest. The glowing headlights of a blacked-out SUV sliced through the darkness as it rolled to a stop just feet away, and 4 thugs stepped out, laughing, drunk on cheap liquor and cruelty. One of them pointed toward Marla and said something too low to hear, but the way the others grinned made the meaning clear. What none of them realized not yet was that someone else was watching from the end of the alley, a man who hadn't planned on getting involved but found the sight impossible to ignore. A man whose instincts didn't allow him to remain still when innocents were cornered. A former Navy SEAL whose quiet walk home was about to turn into something far darker. Marla felt her throat tighten as the men approached, her fingers tightening around the tiny body in her arms. The puppy whimpered at the sound of heavy boots scraping against the concrete, and she whispered to it softly, promising she wouldn't let anything happen to it even though she knew she was in no position to make promises. The tallest thug, a broad-shouldered guy with a shaved head and a jagged scar across his cheek, leaned down and mocked her for stealing someone else's dog. She didn't argue. She didn't even look up. She just curled her arms tighter around the shaking animal, body acting on instinct, the same instinct that had carried her through years of surviving on the street without anyone to rely on. But tonight, that instinct wasn't enough. The man with the scar grew irritated when she didn't respond. His irritation mixed with alcohol, turning into something uglier. With a sudden movement, he reached out and grabbed her blanket, yanking it so hard that Marla fell sideways onto the cold concrete. The puppy squealed, confused and terrified. Instead of stopping, the man sneered, stepped back and kicked her, sharp, deliberate, aimed to hurt. She cried out but kept the puppy curled tightly against her stomach, absorbing the hit on its behalf. The other thugs laughed, encouraging the next blow. They found entertainment in her pain, in the small animal's fear, in the idea that no one would ever step into this alley for someone like her. But someone already had. The man watching from the shadows didn't flinch at the sight. His jaw clenched, a muscle twitching along his cheek as years of training and instinct surged through him. His name was Cole Maddox, a retired Navy SEAL who had seen the worst humanity could offer in war zones overseas, but seeing it here in a back alley of his own city hit differently. He'd been on his way home from a late dinner with a friend, minding his business, hands tucked into the pockets of his jacket. But the second he spotted the SUV, the second he heard that first bark of cruel laughter, he paused. Now, as he watched the boots swing back for another kick, his decision was no longer a decision. It was automatic. It was inevitable. Marla tried to shield the puppy with her whole body, curling around it like a human shell. But the scarred man didn't care what she was protecting, only that she didn't fight back. He kicked her again, this time harder, and the puppy yelped. He laughed. That sound, so casual, so amused, broke something inside Cole. He stepped out of the shadows with quiet precision. The kind of controlled presence that made people turn before they even heard the footsteps, as though their instincts recognized something dangerous approaching. The thugs didn't see him at first. They were too busy circling Marla like vultures. Cole walked closer, eyes locked on the man with the scar, assessing distance, gauging reactions, calculating how quickly things could escalate. His voice finally cut through the darkness, calm, low, and edged with a warning none of them recognized yet. That's enough. The thugs turned slowly, confused for a second. Then they saw him broad-shouldered, standing straight, hands relaxed but ready, face expressionless except for the cold stare fixed on the man in front. The scarred thug smirked and stepped forward. "This ain't your business, man." His speech slurred just slightly, alcohol pushing false confidence through his veins. "Walk away." Cole didn't move, not an inch, the type of stillness that came from combat experience, not fear. He kept his eyes on the group, scanning their posture, their footing, the glint of something metallic under one jacket. "You want to kick someone?" Cole said quietly. "Try someone who can kick back." That line hit the group in different ways, confusion, anger, ego, but none of them understood what stood in front of them. None understood that the man who appeared unarmed had taken down trained insurgents in the dark corners of the world. None realized he could read their body language the way a chess master reads the board. What Cole did understand with absolute clarity was that this confrontation wasn't about him. It was about the woman lying on the ground behind the thugs, shielding a terrified puppy with her battered body. The scarred man laughed again, stepping toward Cole, chest puffed. "You got a death wish or something? Cause this," he said, thumping his fist into his palm, "is gonna get ugly real fast." Cole tilted his head slightly as though genuinely curious. For who? That moment, just a split second of silence, made even the drunken thugs hesitate. Something about Cole felt wrong to them, like a coiled wire ready to snap. The scarred man shrugged off the feeling and swung first, a sloppy punch driven more by ego than coordination. Cole shifted his weight, stepped aside with surgical precision, and let the punch slice through empty air before grabbing the man's wrist and twisting sharply. The crack wasn't loud, but the scream was. The thug dropped to his knees, clutching his arm as Cole stepped back, calm as ever. The other three froze, the drunken haze lifting enough to recognize the problem they had just created. Cole didn't relish the violence, but he didn't hesitate either. This wasn't about fighting. This was about ending something, protecting someone, doing what he had spent years doing in places where no one else could. One of the remaining thugs lunged at him, swinging a cheap pocket knife with shaky hands. Cole ducked under the swipe, slammed his forearm into the man's elbow, and wrenched the knife away with a swift, practiced motion. The thug crumpled with a howl, the knife clattering across the pavement. The last two stepped back, suddenly reconsidering everything. Marla watched from the ground, still clutching the puppy. Eyes wide with disbelief. She didn't know who the man was, but something about the precision, the confidence, the calm way he moved, she knew he wasn't just some passerby, he was something else. The alley fell silent except for the sound of the scarred thug groaning and the puppy whimpering softly. Cole didn't chase the others as they backed away and bolted for the SUV. He let them run. They weren't worth the effort. Instead, he turned toward Marla, crouched down slowly, and said gently, "You okay?" She nodded, though the tremble in her voice betrayed her fear and exhaustion. He extended a hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. His grip was strong but careful, lifting her without rushing. The puppy peeked over her arm and let out a small, shaky whine. Cole reached out, letting the puppy sniff his fingers before gently petting its head. "It's safe now," he said softly. The woman's eyes filled with tears, not just from the pain but from the shock that anyone would intervene for someone like her. She whispered a "thank you" so quietly he barely heard it. Cole glanced toward the street where the SUV had disappeared, then back at her. "Let's get you out of here." But what Cole didn't know, what none of them knew, was that tonight's rescue was only the beginning. The thugs he'd just dismantled weren't acting alone. And the man who owned that SUV wasn't the type to let humiliation go unanswered. Marla clutched the puppy a little tighter as Cole guided her out of the alley. Her steps were uneven, pain tugging at her ribs where the kicks had landed, but she kept moving because his presence felt safe in a way she hadn't felt in years. The city lights glowed dully against the wet pavement, and the sound of distant traffic hummed like white noise, masking the echoes of what had happened minutes earlier. Cole walked beside her without speaking, his eyes sweeping the street with the quiet vigilance of someone who had lived too long with danger to ever relax fully. He wasn't thinking about himself. He was thinking about the woman limping beside him, the pup trembling in her arms, and the way fear still lingered in her expression like a shadow she couldn't shake off. He was also thinking about the men he just put down, and the unsettling truth that something about their behavior hadn't felt random. She stopped near a streetlight, leaning against the metal pole as though catching her breath. Cole paused too and studied her carefully. She was older than she looked in the dark alley, though hardship had added years to her face. Her hands shook as she stroked the puppy's ears, trying to calm it more than herself. Cole crouched to her level, his voice soft. "Do you need a hospital?" She shook her head instantly, panic flickering in her eyes. He recognized that reaction. People who lived on the edge rarely trusted systems meant to help them. "Okay," he murmured. "We won't do that, but let me take you somewhere safe at least." Marla swallowed hard and nodded, though she didn't lift her eyes. Cole stood and offered his hand again. She hesitated but eventually slipped her hand into his. As he helped her stand, a gust of wind swept through the street, chilling her through her torn clothes. Cole pulled off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders without thinking twice. She tried to decline, but he nudged it around her gently. "I've got more at home," he said. "You keep that." She didn't argue. She simply held the puppy closer, burying her nose in its fur as though grounding herself. Cole walked slowly to match her pace, guiding her toward his truck parked around the corner. The quiet stretch of sidewalk gave his mind room to process. Those thugs weren't just intoxicated bullies. Their SUV, their coordinated movements, the casual confidence, they looked like men used to preying on the vulnerable. And when he'd taken them down, none of them had reacted with the shock an average gang of troublemakers would show. No fear, no apology, just hate. It gnawed at him now, because men like that rarely worked alone. Once in the truck, Cole opened the passenger door and helped Marla climb in. The puppy nestled into her lap as though finally feeling safe. Cole shut her door gently, then circled around to the driver's side. When he turned the key, the engine hummed to life with a low growl. The warm air from the vents brought color slowly back to Marla's face. She watched the city pass by through the window, her eyes reflecting the lights like trembling lanterns. Cole didn't ask questions yet. He didn't want to overwhelm her, he could wait. Eventually she spoke first, voice barely above a whisper. You shouldn't have gotten involved. The words came out shaky, but there was sincerity behind them, fear for him, not herself. Cole glanced at her briefly before returning his eyes to the road. And let them do that, he said quietly. Not happening. Marla shook her head and swallowed hard. You don't know who they are. This made Cole pause. The way she said it wasn't casual, it was fright, sir. He turned slightly in his seat so he could see her better. So you do? She stiffened as though she regretted saying anything. Please, she whispered, just drop me anywhere. I don't want you in trouble. Cole didn't respond right away. His mind turned sharply. Whoever those men were, this woman wasn't just afraid of them, she was terrified of what they belonged to. And if she was terrified, that meant the puppy wasn't just a stray she found wandering the streets. Something else was going on here. Didn't push further, instead he drove her to his apartment building, a modest, clean two-story structure with a small courtyard and thick security doors. He parked under the street lamp and turned to her. You can stay here tonight, I've got a spare room. She opened her mouth to protest, but he raised a hand gently. Just tonight, till you're steady, you're hurt and they might come back. Her expression shifted from fear to panic. Then I should go, she insisted, shaking her head. If they saw you. If they follow you, Cole's jaw tightened. If they follow me, they'll wish they hadn't. There was no bravado in his tone, it was calm truth. But still, Marla hesitated. Cole saw the conflict in her eyes, the fear of staying, the fear of leaving, the fear of bringing someone else into danger. The puppy nuzzled her chin as though urging her to stay. After a long moment, she nodded weakly. Just tonight, she whispered. Please don't ask me anything else. He didn't. He opened her door, helped her climb down, and guided her inside. His apartment was simple but warm, soft lighting, clean surfaces, minimal clutter, the kind of space lived in by someone who valued order over decoration. He showed Marla to the guest room, placed a blanket on the bed, and set out a bowl of water for the puppy. Marla sat gingerly on the edge of the mattress, still refusing to relax fully. Cole stood in the doorway for a moment, studying her. She kept her eyes fixed on the puppy in her lap. He took a slow breath and spoke quietly. You're safe here, she nodded without looking up. He stepped out, leaving the door slightly open so she wouldn't feel trapped, and walked to the kitchen. As soon as he was alone, the weight of the situation settled over him. Cole poured himself a glass of water and leaned against the counter, staring at the tiled floor. Something wasn't right. Those men weren't just random criminals. And the way Marla reacted, the fear, the urgency, suggested she was caught in something far bigger than homelessness. He rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the old instincts flare up. The mission sense, the itch that told him something needed investigating. He walked to his living room, sat down, and pulled out his phone. He considered calling someone from his old unit or an old contact he still trusted, but something stopped him. Not yet. He needed more information first. For now, he needed to watch, to wait, to understand what danger had just stepped into his night. Back in the guest room, Marla sat on the bed, knees drawn up, the puppy curled against her stomach. But now that she was finally safe, warm, inside four walls, protected, the emotions she had held back all night finally broke through. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks as she stroked the puppy, whispering apologies, promises, words choked with fear. She wasn't crying from pain. She was crying because she knew that tonight hadn't ended anything. It had started something. The puppy licked her chin, trying to comfort her. She cradled it gently, whispering, I'm so sorry, baby. I shouldn't have tried to take you. I should have left you. I should have. Her voice cracked. The puppy nuzzled deeper. Outside, Cole moved quietly through his apartment, checking locks, windows, angles of sight, habits he never truly unlearned. The streetlights cast a faint glow across his living room as he paused near the window. A black SUV rolled down the street slowly, too slowly. Cole's eyes locked onto it instantly. One of the headlights was cracked, the front bumper dented. Recognition hit immediately. Same SUV. But this time it didn't stop. It kept going, cruising past without slowing. Checking, searching, not attacking yet, just looking for something or someone. Cole felt heat rise in his chest, not panic but readiness. The kind he felt before missions when the first hints of danger brushed the air. He stepped back from the window silently and let the curtain fall back into place. In the guest room, Marla's tears froze as she heard the faint sound of an engine outside. Her breath hitched. She knew that sound. She had heard it right before everything went wrong. Cole walked down the hallway. Marla wiped her face quickly, holding her breath as he appeared in the doorway. His expression was composed, but there was a new alertness in his eyes. They're looking, he said quietly. Marla's heart dropped. The puppy whimpered. And Cole added, I need to know what they want. Her hands trembled again. She didn't want to speak. She didn't want anyone else pulled into this, but she also knew that silence wouldn't protect him, not anymore. She took a shaky breath and whispered, "They aren't just thugs, they work for someone dangerous." Cole nodded slowly, bracing for the truth. "They want the puppy," she whispered. And for the first time all night, Cole's expression truly changed, confusion hardening into something far sharper. Because nothing about that made sense. Not yet. But it would very soon. Cole didn't react right away. He simply stood there framed by the dim hallway light, watching Marla as though trying to determine whether she was delirious from fear or telling a truth too strange to accept. The puppy gave a small, frightened whine, burrowing deeper into the crook of her arm. Marla gently shushed it, her own breath trembling as she waited for Cole to speak. But he didn't move, didn't blink, just listened. Finally, he stepped farther into the room and crouched down in front of her, leveling himself to her eye line. His voice was calm but edged with something sharp, the kind of tone that carried the weight of a man who had walked through too many minefields, literal and metaphorical, to ignore danger when it sat right in front of him. "Tell me exactly what you mean," he said quietly. "Why would dangerous men want a puppy?" Marla's grip tightened around the small animal. She looked down at it, then up at Cole, her eyes swollen from crying, her voice small. "Because he's not just a puppy, not to them," she swallowed, struggling to speak. "He belongs to someone powerful, someone who calls himself Victor Hale." The name made Cole tense almost imperceptibly, a flicker of recognition tightening his jaw. Marla noticed. "You know him?" she asked, voice breaking. Cole didn't confirm or deny it, but the silence between them was answer enough. Marla exhaled shakily and continued. "He's a crime boss or something worse. I don't know all the details, no one does, but everyone who lives on the street knows his people. They don't bother us often, but when they do, it's never good." She clutched the puppy closer. "A couple weeks ago I saw his men dragging this little guy out of a car. He was terrified, crying. One of them kicked him for making noise." Her voice cracked. "I couldn't stand there and watch. I waited until they weren't paying attention and I took him. I thought they wouldn't notice. I thought they had dozens of dogs or animals. Who cares about one more?" Her lips trembled. "But they did notice." Cole leaned back slightly, processing her words with the same methodical precision he'd used to evaluate intel in the field. The idea of a ruthless crime lord sending thugs after a small dog was absurd on paper, but he'd learned long ago that the world didn't operate on logic. It operated on leverage, secrets, power, and sometimes on things darker than anyone wanted to speak aloud. "What does Victor Hale want with him?" Cole asked softly. Marla shook her head. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's cruel. I've seen things around his warehouse, heard things." She shuddered. "People talk about him experimenting with animals, training them for things they shouldn't be trained for." She hesitated, voice trembling. "Things like attack drills, pain endurance, fear conditioning. He uses dogs for demonstrations, to scare people, to send messages." Cole's eyes darkened. He'd seen monsters in war zones, but there was something uniquely twisted about someone who tortured the innocent to show power. "So this one," he nodded toward the puppy, "escaped?" Marla nodded. "And they want him back, not because they love him, because losing him makes them look weak. Because if anyone can just walk away from Victor Hale, even a dog, then other people might think they can too." She wiped a tear with the back of her hand. "I didn't think it through. I just saw a helpless creature being hurt and I couldn't let him suffer," she exhaled shakily. "And now they'll kill me for it, or worse." Cole stayed silent, absorbing the gravity of her words. The puppy's tiny head poked out again, its innocent eyes blinking at him as if sensing it was the subject of the conversation. Cole reached out one finger and the puppy pressed its nose against it softly. Despite everything happening around it, it still trusted. That did something to Cole's chest he wasn't expecting. He stood slowly and stepped back, running a hand through his hair as his mind raced. Victor Hale, that name wasn't just familiar, it was infamous. Cole had crossed paths with one of Hale's operations years ago during a covert joint mission overseas. Hale had not been the target then, but his fingerprints had been all over illegal arms shipments, mercenary networks, and disappearing civilians. The man operated like a ghost, untouchable, vicious, and always hidden behind layers of dirty hands willing to do his bidding. Cole never thought he'd hear that name again. He never expected Hale's men to be beating homeless women in alleys for stolen animals. But now it all lined up in a sickeningly perfect way. He walked back into the hallway, packing slowly, thinking through his options. Marla watched him with anxious eyes, afraid that he might suddenly decide to throw her and the puppy out to keep himself safe. But something about the way Cole moved, controlled, focused, purposeful, told her he was planning something else. After a long silence, Cole returned to the doorway. "You're staying here," he said firmly. "Both of you, I'll keep you safe." Marla shook her head, terrified. "You don't understand, they won't stop. They'll come after you now, they'll come after anyone who helps me." Cole's voice dropped to a quiet, cold certainty. They can try. She wanted to argue, but the tone in his voice made her stop. It wasn't arrogance, it was experience. A man who had walked through worse threats than any street criminal could imagine. Still, Marla wasn't convinced. Please, she whispered, I don't want anyone else getting hurt because of me. Cole crouched again, this time with a gentler expression, and looked her directly in the eyes. You didn't do anything wrong, you saved a life, that's not something you should ever apologize for. His voice softened. And you're not alone anymore. Marla's breath caught, and she looked down to hide the tears filling her eyes again. Cole stood and walked toward the living room. His mind was already shifting into tactical mode. He needed information. He needed a plan, and most importantly, he needed to know how far Victor Hale's reach extended into this city. He dialed a number he hadn't used in 2 years. A man on the other end answered with a gruff voice. You're alive, that's surprising. Riker, Cole muttered, leaning against the counter. I need intel. A low whistle. You only call me when trouble is brewing. It is, Cole said. Victor Hale. Silence. Then where are you? Home. Stay there, Riker said immediately. If Hale's in your orbit, you need backup. I'll come. No, Cole said sharply. Not yet. I need to understand the situation first. Riker exhaled loudly. Fine, but listen carefully. Hale's been moving operations into your side of the city. He's expanding, cleaning the streets, his version of it anyway. Cole's jaw tightened. I saw his men tonight. Riker's tone hardened. Then you need to get off the grid. Hale doesn't leave loose ends. Cole glanced down the hall toward Marla's room. He's already looking. Riker cursed under his breath. Is someone with you? Cole didn't answer directly. There's a target he wants back, a small one. Another silence, then a low, humored exhale. Only you would end up protecting something like that from a crime lord. It's not funny, Cole muttered. I know, Riker replied, but you need to understand something. If Hale wants something, he doesn't stop, ever. You need to decide how far you're willing to go. Cole hung up without responding. He didn't need to decide. He already knew. He turned toward the hallway again. But before he could take a step, the lights in his apartment flickered. Once. Twice. Then went out completely. Marla gasped from the guest room. The puppy whimpered. And Cole instantly dropped into a combat stance, muscles coiled, senses heightening in the sudden darkness. Someone had cut the power. They weren't searching anymore. They had found him. And they were coming. The sudden darkness swallowed the apartment like a curtain dropping over a stage. One moment the warm glow of lamps lit the walls, the next the world turned black and breathless. Cole didn't waste a second. His body moved before his mind even caught up, muscle memory forged in sandstorms, safe houses, and missions where a single flicker of missing light meant the enemy had arrived. His hand slid along the wall until he found the edge of the doorway, his stance lowering, breathing controlled, every sense sharpening to predatory clarity. In the guest room, Marla froze, her hands instinctively clutching the puppy so tightly that the small creature let out a soft, frightened squeak. Her voice trembled as she whispered, Cole. The darkness made her feel small again, helpless, thrown back into alleyways and shadows she spent years trying to survive. But now there was something worse than fear. There was the knowledge that danger wasn't just out there. It had found her here. Cole raised a hand toward the guest room door even though she couldn't see it. Stay quiet, he murmured, voice low but steady. Stay low, don't move unless I say. The calmness in his tone spread through the room like a fragile shield, giving Marla just enough strength to hold her breath and listen. Then he heard it. A soft click, like a latch giving way. Not inside, but outside the hallway entrance. Someone was at the building's main door. Then came another sound, a heavier thud, a forced push followed by muffled footsteps echoing through the corridor outside his apartment unit. Multiple, slow, coordinated, not panicked, not rushed, not amateurs. Cole's pulse remained steady but his jaw tightened with grim understanding. This wasn't a random scare, this wasn't a revenge drive-by, this was a tactical entry. They had come prepared. Cole stepped out into the hallway and moved toward the living room like a shadow gliding through its own territory, every footstep silent, every movement measured. He reached the small cabinet near the kitchen counter and slid it open, retrieving a compact matte black flashlight and a steel-weighted tactical pen. Not weapons, but tools. Enough. They'd do what he needed. The distant sound of boots against the old wooden hallway floors grew louder, controlled steps. Measured gaps, there were at least 3. Maybe 4. Cole flicked the flashlight once, just enough to catch a reflection off the window. A glint of metal. A gun barrel. He clenched the light in his fist, clicked it off, and moved backward into deeper darkness. His mind ran through the layout of his apartment, mapping every corner, every blind spot, every object he could use. He mentally marked the furniture, the angles, the light sources, the shadows. He remembered where the floor creaked and made sure to avoid those boards. The door handle twisted. Slowly. Quietly. Marla's breath hitched. The puppy whimpered. Cole didn't turn, didn't even look, because he already knew exactly where to stand. He positioned himself 3 feet to the side of the entrance, pressed against the wall, body angled, stance loose but ready. His grip tightened around the tactical pen. He listened to every scrape of metal, every small exhale of the men outside. The door cracked open. A sliver of light from the hallway created a thin, glowing line across the floor. A hand slipped in first, gloved, confident. The door pushed farther inch by inch until one of the men stepped inside with a pistol raised, using a flashlight under the barrel to scan the room. Cole moved. Fast. Silent. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisted it down hard until the bones clicked, and drove his knee into the attacker's ribs with brutal precision. The man gasped sharply, losing grip on the gun. Before he could cry out, Cole struck the side of his neck with the tactical pen, causing the man to collapse like a puppet whose strings had been severed. The second man stepped in immediately, swinging his weapon toward the movement. Cole kicked the fallen man's body toward him, using it as a temporary shield. The second man staggered, stumbled, but recovered quickly, too quickly. He raised his gun again. A soft glow from the attacker's flashlight beam lit Cole's profile just enough for recognition. "It's him," the man hissed. "Seal." Cole lunged before the man could. Squeeze the trigger. He slammed into him, grabbing the gun arm and grappling with lethal speed. The two crashed into the dining table, sending chairs clattering to the ground. The gun fired one deafening blast, but the bullet tore through drywall instead of flesh. Marla flinched violently in the guest room, covering the puppy's ears as it cried out. Cole twisted the man's wrist until the weapon dropped, then slammed the man's head into the table edge, knocking him out cold. But the impact shook the apartment enough to vibrate through the floor. Which meant the others now knew where he was. Cole ducked behind the kitchen counter just as another blast tore through the doorway. A third man entered, this one moving with the smooth confidence of someone better trained. His stance, his grip, his scanning pattern, this wasn't a street enforcer. This was hired muscle. Possibly ex-military. Possibly worse. Cole stayed low, controlling his breathing, watching the man's shadow shift across the floor as he scanned the apartment. The man's voice crackled through a small earcom. 2 down, 1 active. The target should be in the back room. The target. Not the woman. Not the seal. The puppy. Cole felt something inside him snap cold and sharp. No more playing defense. He moved like a ghost, sliding around the back of the kitchen island and circling into the living room. His footsteps were so quiet that even the seasoned intruder didn't notice until it was too late. Cole grabbed a heavy picture frame from the shelf and swung it with a precise lateral arc, smashing it into the man's jaw. The intruder stumbled, dropping his gun, but recovered faster than expected, tackling Cole into the couch. They grappled violently, fists slamming, elbows cracking, knees driving forward. The man was stronger than the others, but Cole's movements were sharper, cleaner, shaped by discipline rather than brute force. He struck the man's throat with an open palm, then drove his fist under the ribs where the organs were unprotected. The intruder gagged, faltered, and Cole flipped him onto his back and slammed his forearm into the man's neck until he went limp. Silence filled the room again. Except Cole knew the silence wouldn't last. If 3 came in, the 4th was nearby. He turned sharply and took a defensive position, eyes narrowed, senses flaring. But no new man appeared. Instead, he heard something else. A soft metallic ping. Then the hiss of something releasing. Cole's eyes widened. Flashbang. He dove toward the hallway and yelled, "Cover your ears now." The grenade detonated with a blinding white burst and a concussive roar that rattled the apartment. Marla screamed, curling over the puppy, shielding it as best she could. Cole staggered, ears ringing, visions swimming, but he stayed on his feet through pure discipline. A 4th man entered through the smoke, aiming directly toward the hallway where Marla hid. Cole roared, a deep animal sound that cut through the ringing in his own ears, and launched himself forward. He slammed into the man mid-aim, sending both crashing into the wall. The man clawed for his second weapon. Cole trapped his wrist against the plaster and drove his knee into his ribs again and again until the man sagged. The attacker dropped. Cole stood over him, chest heaving, sweat dripping down his forehead. His ears still buzzed from the blast, his shoulder throbbed from hitting the wall, but he stayed alert. He scanned the doorway, waited for movement, listened for footsteps, voices, engines, anything. Nothing. No more intruders. For now. He turned to the hallway. Marla was huddled on the floor, shaking uncontrollably, covering the puppy with her whole body. Her hair stuck to her damp cheeks, her breaths sharp and uneven. Cole knelt beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. She flinched before realizing it was him. "It's okay," he whispered. "It's over for now." She lifted her tear-streaked face and looked up at him with an expression he'd seen only a few times in his life, from civilians he had pulled out of danger zones. It wasn't gratitude. It was terror. "Cole," she whispered, "if they're willing to do this, then Victor Hale knows where you live now." Cole held her gaze. He didn't deny it. But there was something else in his eyes now. Not fear. Not anger. Resolve. "They came to take something," Cole said slowly, "and they failed." Marla nodded, trembling. Cole continued softly but firmly, "Now they won't be back with a small team." Her breath caught. "They'll come with an army," Cole said. "And I'll be ready." Cole stood slowly, his silhouette outlined against the faint glow of the streetlights leaking through the blinds. The apartment reeked of gunpowder, sweat, and shattered wood. 3 unconscious men lay sprawled across the floor, monuments to the violence that had just unfolded. Marla stared at them with wide, terrified eyes, her arms wrapped protectively around the trembling puppy. Her lips moved, whispering something under her breath, maybe a prayer, maybe a reminder that she was still alive. Cole wasn't sure. He only knew one thing: this wasn't over, not even close. The ringing in his ears began to fade, replaced by the quiet hum of the city outside. Every instinct in his body screamed that they needed to move. Immediately, he'd been ambushed enough times to know exactly what came next. First the scouts, then the hunters. Victor Hale wouldn't make the same mistake twice. He wouldn't send 4 men again. The next time he'd send 12 or 20, or worse, the ones who didn't miss. Cole turned to Marla, who was now struggling to catch her breath. Her panic was rising fast, the shock pushing her to the edge of collapse. She held the puppy so tightly that it whined softly, nudging her chin. Cole crouched in front of her, putting himself on her level, his voice steady and grounding. "Listen to me, we need to leave right now." Marla shook her head violently. "No, we can't. They'll follow you, they'll kill you." Cole placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "They tried." She stared at him, stunned by how casually he said it. He wasn't boasting. He wasn't downplaying the danger. He was stating a fact, a simple truth shaped by years of surviving combat. Cole helped her up, keeping one hand under her elbow as she wobbled on her feet. The puppy clung to her sweater, trembling violently. "Is there somewhere safe you can go?" Cole asked quietly. Marla shook her head. "I don't have family. I don't have anywhere. That's why I was in that alley. That's why they found me so easily." Cole nodded slowly, then his expression hardened with quiet resolve. "Then you stay with me, but not here." He glanced around the apartment again, his eyes narrowing at the open door, the broken furniture, the bullet hole in the wall. "They know this place. This apartment is burned." Marla swallowed hard, fear tightening her throat. Where will we go? If Hale wants the puppy, he'll keep looking. He doesn't stop." Cole looked down at the pup curled against her chest. "Then neither will I." He moved quickly, sweeping through the apartment with trained efficiency. He grabbed a backpack from the closet, some water bottles, protein bars, a medical kit, his spare phone, and a map folded so many times its edges had frayed. He stuffed them into the bag in seconds. Marla stood silently in the hallway, watching him with trembling confusion. "You're acting like you've done this before," she whispered. Cole paused, then zipped the backpack shut. "More times than I care to remember." He checked the intruders one last time, each unconscious but breathing. Cole took one of their radios, earpieces, and a small black flash drive attached to a chain around one man's neck. Anything that might give him leverage, anything he could use later to track them. Then he grabbed his keys, stepped toward Marla, and gently guided her toward the side exit of the building, avoiding the front entirely. Outside, the night air felt sharper, colder. The quiet buzz of street lamps flickered against the concrete. Cole scanned both ends of the street, noting every shadow, every car, every window where movement stirred. The black SUV from earlier had vanished, but that didn't comfort him. Professionals didn't circle blocks twice. They parked far and walked silently. They watched from distance. Cole moved first, urging Marla close behind him as they crossed to the old truck parked under the street lamp. He opened the back door and helped her climb inside, placing the puppy in her lap. She clutched it tightly, still glancing nervously over her shoulder. Cole slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and the engine rumbled to life. He pulled out of the neighborhood with precise control, eyes never staying on one mirror for too long. Marla broke the silence first. "Cole, why are you doing this?" He didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel. "Because someone has to," she shook her head. "No, I mean you don't even know me, you don't owe me anything, and that puppy, he's not yours." Cole exhaled slowly. In the darkness of the truck, his voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. "I've spent years protecting people in places no one cared about, people the world forgot, people like you, people like him." He nodded toward the puppy. "I've seen what monsters like Victor Hale do. I've watched them hurt the weak so they can feel strong. I made a promise back then, if I ever had the chance to stop men like him, I would." Marla swallowed hard, her voice cracking slightly. "And now you think this is that chance?" Cole didn't hesitate. "I know it is." She looked down at the puppy, stroking its head gently. The little creature yawned, exhausted from fear, then curled into her arms. Marla whispered, "Then, what do we do now?" Cole glanced at her only once, his jaw set in a line of unwavering determination. "First, we disappear, then we figure out what he wants with that puppy, and then," he shifted the truck into a faster lane, "we make him regret ever coming after you." The city blurred past them. Neon signs flickered like heartbeat rhythms against wet streets. People stumbled out of late-night diners, taxis sped through yellow lights, and somewhere in the distance sirens wailed, but none of it touched them. They were slipping into the shadows, into the margins where people vanished and lived between breaths. Marla leaned her forehead against the window, feeling the cold seep into her skin. Her voice was barely audible. "Do you think we can outrun him?" Cole's eyes hardened. "We're not outrunning him," he said. "We're going to end this." She didn't ask how, she didn't need to. There was something in his tone, final, unshakable, forged by battles she couldn't imagine, that told her whatever he was planning would not be small. The truck wound through side streets, avoiding highways where surveillance cameras tracked every plate. Cole took a long, looping route across the industrial district, then through an abandoned warehouse zone where broken windows glinted like teeth beneath the moonlight. Finally, he turned into a faded mechanics shop surrounded by chain-link fencing. A flickering sign read "Tanner's Auto Closed." Cole parked behind the building and shut off the engine. Marla looked around nervously. "Where are we?" Cole zipped up his jacket and stepped out. "A safe place." He knocked on the back door, 3 short taps, 1 slow, a coded rhythm. A moment later, the lock clicked open. A man in his 50s stood inside, muscular, wearing a tool belt and a grim smile. "Took you long enough," he muttered. Cole nodded. "Riker said you were nearby." The man waved Marla inside. "If Hale's after you, kid, then this is the only place you want to be." Marla stepped hesitantly into the dimly lit workshop, the puppy tucked in her arms. Tools hung on the walls, a smell of engine oil mixing with steel and dust. It felt strangely safe. Cole entered last, shutting the door behind him with a quiet thud. Riker crossed his arms and nodded toward the puppy. "So that's the target." Cole nodded once. Riker exhaled. "Then we've got a problem." Marla's voice trembled. "What kind of problem?" Riker looked at Cole, then at her, his expression grim. "That isn't just any puppy," he said, "and Hale isn't after him because he's sentimental." Marla's pulse quickened. "Then why?" Riker traded a look with Cole before answering. "Because whatever Victor Hale is planning," he nodded at the puppy. "That little guy is the key to all of it." The room went cold. Cole felt the weight of those words land like a stone in his chest. The puppy blinked innocently, unaware of the storm surrounding its small existence. And then Riker said the part that made Cole's blood run cold. "He's not just trying to get him back. He's trying to activate something." The air inside the dim workshop shifted, thickening with a tension that made Marla instinctively pull the puppy closer. The little creature blinked up at her, oblivious to the revelation hanging in the room like a blade. Cole's posture stiffened, shoulders squared, eyes sharpening into something colder, harder. Riker didn't speak for a long moment. He simply let the weight of his last words settle until the silence felt suffocating. Cole stepped forward. "Explain now." Riker rubbed a hand over his jaw, packing slowly between an old workbench and a stack of overturned crates. The overhead bulb hummed faintly above him, flickering as if even it was nervous. Finally, he stopped and faced Cole dead-on. Hale wasn't just experimenting with dogs for intimidation. The man's been running illegal bioenhancement trials on animals for years. The kind governments pretend they don't know about. neural implants, reflex augmentation, pain response suppression. Stuff that never should have existed outside a high-security lab. Marla shook her head, disbelief etched across her features. That can't be real, he's just a crime lord. Riker let out a humorless laugh. Just a crime lord? Victor Hale is the kind of man who funds scientists the rest of the world hides from. He buys tech off black markets they pretend don't exist. He's been trying to create an animal he could control. Fully obedient, no fear, no pain, the perfect weapon. Marla's breath caught as she looked down at the puppy. He's just a baby, how could they? But the words died in her throat. Cole stepped closer, examining the puppy with grim focus. He hadn't believed in coincidences since his first deployment, and this was no coincidence. You said he's the key, Cole murmured. Why, what's in him? Riker walked to a metal cabinet and pulled out an old tablet, cracked screen barely holding together. He tapped a few times until a series of encrypted files appeared, their edges glowing faintly. Intel I intercepted a few weeks ago, didn't know what it meant at the time, now it makes sense. He angled the screen toward them. Cole leaned in. Marla didn't want to look, but she did. On the screen was a blueprint, a biological schematic, a dog's skull, a microchip embedded deep behind the eye socket. The puppy whimpered softly, curling into Marla's chest as if sensing her fear. There, Riker said, pointing, prototype neural command chip. Hale's been trying to implant it into dogs for years. Most didn't survive, others went feral. He couldn't stabilize the connection. Riker zoomed in. But this file says the last batch had a successful integration into one subject. Marla felt her legs weaken. No, they didn't put something in him. He's just a little guy. He's so sweet. Cole spoke gently. It doesn't change who he is or that you saved him. Marla bit her lip, trying to stop the tears welling up again. The puppy squirmed in her arms, sensing her distress, pressing its small head against her chin. Riker cleared his throat. That chip inside him, Hale isn't after the dog, he's after the tech. He turned to Cole. If he gets that chip back, he can replicate it, weaponize it, sell it, and once that happens, Riker let out a long, breathless sigh. God help whoever he aims it at. Cole stepped away from the light and stood in the shadows for several seconds, thinking. His mind flipped through mission memories, captured tech, enemy experiments, black site secrets he wished he could forget. He had seen this kind of darkness before. Men who tried to play God, men who used living beings as experiments, men who thought power meant control over life itself. Riker's voice cut through the silence. You understand the scale now, right? This isn't a street fight, this isn't a rescue mission. Hale has resources, labs, soldiers, scientists, money, and now he knows you have the one thing he's been missing. Marla looked between them, panic rising like a tide. Then maybe I should give him back, she whispered suddenly, hugging the puppy tighter. Maybe it's the only way. He'll stop coming after us, he'll stop hurting people. I can't let more people die because of me. Cole turned sharply, his voice firm but not unkind. No. Marla flinched, but... No, his tone softened but his resolve didn't. You don't hand an innocent creature to a monster, you don't give him what he wants just because he scares you. He lowered his voice. If you do that, you'll never forgive yourself. Marla's lip trembled, the puppy let out a tiny bark as if agreeing. Cole stepped closer. Do you know why Hale wants him back so badly? She shook her head. Cole answered quietly, because you proved him wrong. She blinked through tears. What do you mean? You took the puppy from him, you showed him that even the smallest life can escape his control. You embarrassed him, and men like Hale, men who build their power on fear, they can't stand losing control. Marla sobbed once, her breath cracking. Cole placed a steady hand on her shoulder. You didn't do this, he did. Riker cleared his throat again, this time more gently. Look, the way I see it, we've only got two options. One, we disappear completely off-grid, no phones, no contact, no trace. Marla bit her lip, and the other. Riker looked at the puppy, then at Cole. We take the fight to him. Marla gasped, no you can't, he'll kill us, he'll. Cole interrupted her softly. Marla, she looked up, he already tried. The truth of that froze her. Cole continued, voice steady as steel. If we run, he'll hunt us until the ends of the earth, but if we strike first, if we use what we know, we have a chance. He exhaled. A small one, but better than none. Riker added, and you're not alone, you've got me, you've got Cole, and you've got that little guy. he nodded at the puppy. He's not a weapon, but he does have something Hale needs that gives us leverage. Before Marla could respond, the puppy suddenly stiffened in her arms, ears pinned back, small body tense. It stared at the workshop door and let out a low growl. Cole's instincts triggered instantly. He moved toward a metal drawer, pulled out a handgun Riker kept for emergencies, and chambered a round. Riker grabbed a wrench from his belt, positioning himself beside the doorway. Marla stepped back, heart pounding, her grip on the puppy trembling. Cole lifted his hand, signaling silence. The workshop fell completely still. Then, something scraped outside the building. Slow, deliberate. Riker whispered, motion sensor didn't go off. Cole's eyes hardened, because they're not moving, they're waiting. Marla's breath hitched, they found us already. Cole didn't answer. But the look in his eyes said everything. Another sound, a quiet metallic click, the faintest adjustment of a weapon being readied. Cole stepped into position, voice low and deadly calm. Marla, when I tell you to run, you run behind the tool cabinets. Stay low, don't make a sound. Her knees shook. Cole, I trust me. The door handle began to turn. Riker whispered under his breath, it's too soon, they shouldn't have found us this fast. Cole nodded once, which means they didn't follow us. Riker frowned, then how? The door creaked open. And Cole finished the sentence for him. They tracked the chip. The door swung inward. And Victor Hale's elite strike unit stepped through the darkness. The moment the door opened, time seemed to stretch into a slow, suffocating silence. Shadows poured into the workshop like living things, swallowing the warm light and replacing it with a chilling, calculated presence. 3 figures stepped inside first, bodies armored, faces hidden behind matte black tactical masks, weapons raised with surgical precision. These weren't thugs, these weren't hired muscle, these were elimination teams, trained, silent, deadly. And behind them, stepping into the doorway with the cold confidence of a man who believed the world belonged to him, stood Victor Hale. He didn't carry a gun, he didn't need to, the most dangerous men never do. His voice floated into the room with a smooth, sickening calm. Maddox, he said, smiling faintly. I should have known it was you. Cole didn't move, his stance steady, gun raised but held low enough to avoid provoking an immediate shot. Riker tightened his grip on the wrench beside him. Marla shrank back behind a tall metal cabinet, clutching the puppy who now trembled violently in her arms. Hale stepped farther into the workshop, boots clicking softly against the concrete floor. You have something of mine, he said, something valuable. His eyes flicked toward Marla's hiding place, sensing her presence even if he couldn't see her. You've caused a great deal of trouble for such a small creature. Cole's voice was low and even. You sent armed men to beat a woman over a puppy. Hale smirked, not just a puppy. He raised one gloved finger. My investment. Cole felt a chill crawl through his spine. Hale continued, voice dripping with arrogance. You see that little implant in his skull? My masterpiece links to a neurological frequency only I possess. And when properly activated, he paused, savoring the tension. It allows me to control without speaking, without touching, without mercy. The puppy whimpered softly, burying its face against Marla's sweater. Hale smiled wider. He responds to only one frequency, mine, a bond of domination, a perfect weapon. Cole's jaw clenched. He's an innocent animal. Hale raised a brow. There is no such thing as innocence, only usefulness. Riker's lip curled in disgust. You're sick. Hale turned his head slowly toward him. Sickness is failing to recognize opportunity. I, on the other hand, he made a subtle gesture. In response, one of the masked operatives raised a sleek handheld device, small, metallic, blinking with red light. Cole instantly recognized the danger. EMP trigger? Hale chuckled. Not quite, it's the activation beacon, one that forces obedience. He tapped his gloved fingers together, and one that your little stray has already begun responding to. Marla gasped softly, the sound barely audible, yet Hale's head turned toward her hiding place like a predator zeroing in on prey. Ah, Hale murmured, there she is. Before Cole could move, the operative aimed the device toward her. The puppy let out a sudden, piercing yelp, sharp and anguished, its entire small body jerking violently. Marla cried out, dropping to her knees, desperate to comfort him, but the puppy convulsed again, whining in raw pain. Cole moved. He didn't think, didn't plan. He lunged forward with explosive force just as the operative pressed the activation button again. Cole tackled him, sending them both crashing into the row of metal tool drawers. Sparks flew as the device clattered across the floor. The remaining operatives opened fire. The workshop erupted into chaos. Riker dove behind a steel workbench as bullets shredded the metal sheet behind him. Cole rolled across the concrete, firing 2 controlled shots that hit one operative in the knee armor, knocking him off balance. The man fell with a loud crash. Hale stepped backward, calmly watching the violence unfold like a man observing a chessboard he fully believed he'd already won. Marla screamed as bullets ricocheted around her. She shielded the puppy with her own body, curling over him protectively. Cole saw her from across the room, fear pumping electricity through his veins. He rose, firing again, this time hitting the weapon of the operative, targeting her. The gun flew from the man's hands, but another operative rushed her immediately, grabbing her by the arm and yanking her out from behind the cabinet. The puppy cried out as she resisted. "Let her go," Cole roared, sprinting forward. The operative raised a knife to Marla's throat. Hale lifted a hand lazily. "Don't kill her yet," he smirked. "Fear makes people obedient." Cole froze mid-step, not because he was afraid, but because he was calculating every angle, every exit, every heartbeat in the room. Hale stepped closer, voice smooth as oil. "Maddox, you can't protect her or the dog, you're alone." His eyes gleamed behind the dim workshop lights. "You don't win this one." Cole didn't respond, not with words. He moved. Like lightning, like instinct sharpened through a lifetime of survival. He threw his gun at the operative's face, an unexpected move that made the attacker flinch. In that split second, Cole grabbed a loose chain hanging from the ceiling, swung it forward, and it wrapped around the operative's wrist. Cole yanked hard, pulling the knife away from Marla's throat. Riker seized the moment and slammed his wrench into the attacker's ribs. The man dropped. Hale's expression finally faltered, just a flicker, just long enough. Cole sprinted to Marla, pulling her and the puppy behind a support pillar. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head, tears streaking her face. He hurt him, Cole, he hurt him." The puppy lay limp in her arms, breathing shallowly. Cole's heart clenched, but he kept focused. "We're not letting him touch either of you again." Hale's voice echoed across the workshop. "You're delaying the inevitable, Maddox." He gestured to his final operative. "End this." The last operative raised his rifle. Cole pulled Marla tight against him, turning his body to shield her. But before the operative could fire, the puppy lifted its head. Its eyes, glassy a moment earlier, suddenly flared with a strange metallic shimmer. A pulse. A vibration. And then, a piercing electronic whine filled the room. Hale froze. The operative staggered. Cole felt the hair on his arms lift. Riker dropped the wrench, eyes wide. "What the hell?" Marla gasped as the puppy pushed away from her arms and stumbled to its feet. It swayed, tiny legs trembling as that strange shimmer pulsed again, stronger this time. Hale's smile returned. "Ah," he whispered, "there it is." The puppy suddenly cried out, a sharp, heartbreaking sound, and collapsed again. Marla screamed. "No." Cole knelt beside them, heart pounding. "Stay with him, just breathe, Marla, look at me." But Marla wasn't looking at him. She was staring at the floor. At the small pool of blood dripping from the puppy's nose. Her scream tore through the workshop, raw and broken. Hale stepped forward, calm as a king walking through his court. "Bring me my property," he commanded. The last operative moved forward. Cole stood in front of Marla and the puppy. Not moving. Not stepping aside. Not surrendering. Hale tilted his head. "You're going to die for a dog." Cole's voice was a whisper and a war cry. "I'll die before I let you touch him or her." A pause. Heavy. Sharp. Final. Hale nodded once to his operative. The rifle lifted. The barrel aligned. The trigger tightened. Marla squeezed her eyes shut. Cole braced, every muscle coiled. Riker roared and charged from the side. The shot fired. And the workshop filled with chaos one last time. Gunfire, shouting, shadows crashing together. As fate decided who would fall. And who would rise.